Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's concert, which is entitled Fascinating Piano Rolls. I mentioned that I was going to do this last week. I want to play a couple of the most rare and interesting rolls in my collection. I'll probably play more rolls tonight than usual, but I just want to share these with all of you and do something a little different tonight. But everything I play myself will also be inspired by piano rolls. And the first piece I'd like to play tonight is quite an amazing discovery that was made in the early 1970s. Probably the most remarkable piece of music by Scott Joplin that has been discovered since Joplin himself died. And I have played the original piano roll that I have. There's probably only about 5 originals in existence of this piece. And the sheet music was never published, but they discovered the existence of this piano roll. And the composition is so beautiful, it is very, very obviously a Joplin composition, without a doubt. It says so on the piano roll label. This is the Silver Swan Rag by Scott Joplin, and here is the first edition of the sheet music that was published in the 70s, and this first version that was transcribed was written down by Dick Zimmerman, I believe, and I thought I'd show you that since I've already shown you the piano roll. So let's get things going with Scott Joplin's legendary Silver Swan, which was only ever released on a player piano roll. Thank you so much. The Silver Swan by Scott Joplin. That must have been thrilling back in the 1970s to have been around when that piece was first discovered. Well, like I said, everything I want to play for you tonight is going to be inspired by piano rolls. A number of the pieces I'm going to play, like the Joplin rag I just performed, were only ever issued on piano rolls. The sheet music was not published, and sometimes the pieces of music were never even copyrighted, believe it or not. Here's a really hot rag that I recorded this on one of my CDs years ago, but I don't play it that often. And I don't really know what the title means, but this piece was written by Paul Pratt, who was one of the great ragtimers of the original period. The date is 1916, and again, only ever released on piano rolls. It's called Wailana Rag. That's spelled W-A-I-L-A-N-A. Wailana Rag, two-step, 1916, by great Paul Pratt. Thank you so much. Wailana, a rag by Paul Pratt. I think he was from Indiana. Not 100% sure on that. There were a number of great ragtime writers in Indianapolis back in those days. Well, I'm always happy to take requests, as usual, although I have planned a number of things that I want to do ahead of time for you. A number of the pieces that I'm going to play are related to some of the piano rolls that I'm going to demonstrate for you. You know, say it's by the same composer or it's a similar style piece or what have you. What I'm going to do next is a vain imitation of one of my very favorite piano rolls that was ever made. I think it's one of the most remarkable rolls. I suppose I should explain that there are both arranged rolls and hand-played rolls. Now, the hand-played rolls really didn't show up until about the early 1910s, and among the artists to make hand-played rolls was the great touring concert pianist Blind Boone, who wrote a couple of rags, and he made about 7 or 8 hand-played player piano rolls in 1912, and there's one of them that is just more remarkable than any of the others, which I think demonstrates his style. He was not just a ragtime pianist, he was probably played more classical piano than anything else. And this is an example of an old parlor song, an old ballad that dates all the way back to the 1860s, done in the style of Blind Boon. He goes through several variations on it. First, it's a slow ballad, and then he does it as kind of like Franz Liszt, and he puts the melody in the left hand, and then he plays it more like a folk rag, and on the last variation, he just attacks the piano. So here is my imitation of Blind Boon's remarkable hand-played player piano roll of the old ballad, When You and I Were Young, Maggie. When I Were Young, Maggie. Thank you so much, everybody. Well, thanks for the nice comments here on YouTube. Adam is really cooking when the camera bounces. Oh, that's funny. Well, usually at about this point in the concert, I mentioned that I do accept virtual tips for these performances. If you enjoy the music, all you have to do is send in a tip on PayPal or Venmo, and there should be information for both in the postings and the chat on all three websites. Ah, Bob Milne's listening tonight. Gee, you wonder where I've heard that tune before, Bob? Maggie, that is. Well, now I'm going to play my first piano roll for you. If you haven't heard my concerts before, this is a 1913 Apollo player piano, which was restored by Jerry DeBaker from Denver. And a number of the rolls that I'm going to play for you tonight are ones that I learned about through a friend of mine named Mike Montgomery, who was one of the big piano roll collectors that lived in Detroit most of his life. And Mike really had incredible knowledge about these things. I got to hear him do a seminar at a Ragtime festival where he discussed a number of the most rare and interesting ragtime rolls. And so I'm going to play a few of these for you, as well as a few different ones that Mike did not demonstrate that day. I don't have all of them, for one thing. I don't have all the rolls. This first one I'm going to play is one of the classic ragtime songs. It's not a classic rag, it's a it's a popular song, but it's a classic. And I don't know that you're going to be able to read the piano roll labels too well online tonight, but let me see what this looks like. Yeah, you're not going to be able to see it too well. Maybe if I hold it real close to the camera. Maybe I won't bother showing you the roll labels tonight. But this is a rhythmic piano roll of Waiting for the Robert E. Lee, played by the composer, Louis F. Muir. The tune came out in 1912, and this is the only piano roll that Louis Muir ever made. I think he died not too long after this. He didn't write all that many tunes. There was one called When Ragtime Rosie Ragged the Rosary. That was kind of a mild hit. And what's neat about this is apparently Louis F. Muir was one of those guys that could only play in one key. He could only play an F sharp on the piano, not unlike Irving Berlin, for instance. And because the piano was a very difficult instrument to record at that time, back in the 1910s, this is really the only example we have of his piano playing. And so we get to hear Louis Muir himself play Waiting for the Robert E. Lee. Here we go. And there may be a few times when I'm playing the rolls tonight that I have to adjust the tracking. This piano does not have automatic tracking. Make sure I'm in the right key. But here we go. Waiting for the Robert E. Lee. And I also don't know what tempos all of these are going to be. Long leader. Robert E. Lee. That's a pretty unusual piano roll. I'm lucky to have a recut of that roll, and honestly I prefer piano roll recuts because the paper's better and I don't have to worry about it tearing or breaking as much. I do have a number of rare original rolls, but in many cases I'm lucky to even get recuts of some of these things. And so there's Waiting for the Robert E. Lee, played by the composer Louis F. Muir. Now the historians, in this case Mike Montgomery, could not figure out for a long time what the third theme in that roll is. There's no third part to the song, Waiting for the Robert E. Lee, but eventually he realized that it was another song that Muir had composed called Take Me to That Swanee Shore. So there's a chorus of that in the roll as well. Now let's go back to my performances for the night, and I'm going to play an early folk rag for you by one of the composers of that period that I really love. His name was Les Copeland. He was the pianist with Lou Doc Stadter's Minstrels. So he toured all over the country playing with them, later on lived in France. Apparently he was quite an eccentric. He would ride trains, he would hop on trains like a hobo, and even eat flowers, I think, is one of his characteristics. I have performed French pastry rag. Maybe some of you would recognize that one. But here's one that was only ever released on piano roll. He made, I don't know how many rolls it was, about 8 or 10, and there are a number of pieces, not just this one, that he wrote that were only released on rolls. This one is appropriate for me since I live in Durango, Colorado. We're going to do Rocky Mountain Fox, a rag by Les Copeland. Thank you very much. Rocky Mountain Fox, a rag by Les Copeland. Okay, we're going to get out another piano roll. I might just have to leave the sheet music over here to the side. And I was telling you about some of the rare rolls that Mike Montgomery researched, and here's one of them. I have a recut of this. This is not the original roll, but I own one of the original rolls. This one is quite rare. Mike said there were only 2 copies ever found, so I have one of only 2 original copies of this roll in the world. And it's it was a mystery who the pianist was. The tune is called Shake It and Break It, arranged and played by Deering H. Palmer. And Mike was talking to one of the other historians about one of the great African-American songwriters in the 1920s, whose name was Jack Palmer. He was involved with W.C. Handy in Memphis, I think, and he wrote a couple of classic jazz tunes. He wrote I Found a New Baby and Everybody Loves My Baby. And one of the things they learned about Jack Palmer was that he could only play in the key of F sharp. Doesn't this sound familiar? And so Mike realized this piano roll by Deering H. Palmer is in F sharp. And they found out that's what his real name was. It's Deering H. Palmer. And this tune is not the same as the other piece that came out in the 20s called Shake It and Break It that a lot of dance bands recorded. This is a different one, and it sounds a lot like a couple of early blues tunes. If you listen closely, it sounds very much like Artie Matthews' famous Weary Blues. So here is Shake It and Break It, the only piano roll ever made, hand-played by Deering H. Palmer, also known as the songwriter Jack Palmer. Shake It and Break It. Oh, thanks for the nice comment there, Amy. She says, loving this concert tonight. Great music, great piano rolls, and wonderful history lessons with no tests. That's right. I promise no pop quizzes. Most of the rolls I'm going to play for you tonight are hand-played because I find those the most interesting. They sound more like real pianists. They don't have who don't have 20 fingers, you know. Here's a couple of handwritten notes from Mike Montgomery, who passed away about 12 years ago now. What does this say? Anyway, now we're going to move on to another one of the great African-American composers who was, I don't think he was ever quite as well loved and what should I say, highly regarded by critics and so forth during his own time as he should have been. I'm talking about James P. Johnson, who's called the father of stride piano. And he, of course, wrote the anthem of the Roaring Twenties, the Charleston. And a couple of pieces that Johnson wrote were only ever issued on piano rolls. The one I'm going to play for you next is a beautiful waltz. This is called Eccentricity, or Eccentricity, and it's a true syncopated waltz by the great James P. Johnson. Eccentricity. Thank you very much. The James P. Johnson music really is very challenging to play, but I'm going to try and do some more of it for you. Let me think what I want to play next. I think we'll do this roll next. This is a piano roll, a QRS roll that is not played by James P. Johnson. However, it's a James P. Johnson composition. It was written by Johnson and Isham Jones, the great band leader in the 1920s. This is the original roll. I have to be careful with it. Hopefully the tracking's okay. I will have to, unfortunately, adjust tracking, and block your view of the keyboard once in a while. But anyway, this tune is called Ivy Cling to Me. Isn't that clever? Ivy Cling to Me. 1922 is when this came out. And the roll is played by another one of my very favorite pianists and composers, J. Russell Robinson. And what's unusual about this, first of all, it's a really advanced tune. The harmony and so forth is very unusual. And at the same time that Robinson was working for QRS, so was James P. Johnson. And Mike Montgomery theorized that this piano roll sounds so much like James P. Johnson that it could be a duet. There are more than 10 fingers playing here, and it could be that James P. Johnson was at the QRS Piano Roll Company on the same day as J. Russell Robinson. I don't know for certain, but I think this is a possible candidate for a duet between Robinson and James P. Johnson. So here is Ivy, Cling to Me. I hadn't heard that roll in a while, and now that I listen to it again, it does not sound like a duet, but that last chorus sounds just like James P. Johnson. Maybe there was a mistake and they mislabeled the roll. Who knows? But it's a great roll. And now I'm going to play one of the other James P. Johnson compositions that was only ever released on a player piano roll. I've been playing this for years. It's a really exciting piece, what you might call stride piano. And I believe this came out a little bit later, 1925 or 26, something like that. And I see a comment here. I can try and answer this real quick before I play the next piece. Paul says, please explain what you do to enhance the rolls. This is unusual for a regular 88-note upright player piano because Apollos have dynamic control. This is the dynamic lever. This is the tempo lever. I control the pedaling myself as well. So I can add a little bit of expression that ordinarily you would not have. And unfortunately, I've never owned a true reproducing piano like an Apico or a Duart. I've always wanted one, but there's limited space and money for such things when you're a musician. Anyhow, back to the next Johnson piece. This is called Harlem Chocolate Babies on Parade. Thank you so much. Harlem Chocolate Babies on Parade. That has an off-key ending, which is something that was actually done in the 1920s. Not real dissonant chords, but it's an off-key ending, and you find that a lot on piano rolls and so forth. It's kind of fun. And when I learn tunes off player piano rolls like that, sometimes it can be a slow process, you know, but what is neat is that I can then add in expression, dynamics, my own musical interpretation of these pieces that you can't hear just on a regular 88-note player piano roll. Of course, true reproducing rolls reproduce dynamics, pedaling, and expression exactly like the artist played it. But that's not always the case with these rolls. Now, I'm going to play for you from a recut, what I think is James P. Johnson's hottest piano roll. I mean, all of his rolls are really wonderful, but this one stands out as a very exciting arrangement and performance. Again, I'm sure from the early 20s. You know, many of these rolls are hand-played because the rolls sound so much like the records of the same performers. Tempo 100, oh boy. The tempo markings on rolls are never exactly right. They're just a guideline. This is Dr. Jazz's Razzmatazz, not composed, but played by James P. Johnson. Dr. Jazz's Razzmatazz. Isn't that an amazing piano roll? Thank goodness there's an automatic rewind on this thing. Dr. Jazz's Razzmatazz. Let's put that away, and then I'll tell you about the next piece I'm going to play for you. played over here. Okay. I mentioned reproducing piano rolls. Many of the greatest artists of the period made rolls for Apico or duo art, people like George Gershwin and so forth. And I'm going to play a piece that I was inspired to learn by a Zez Confrey piano roll. Now, I can't play that on this piano properly, but I was able to kind of pick out the arrangement by ear. And this is a popular song. I think it's French, actually. Yeah. Copyright 1922 in Paris. Music by Leo Danidurf. And this song became a big hit in the mid-20s, and years later it was performed by Charlie Chaplin in the movie Modern Times. This is called Titina. And here is the sheet music cover when the song was used in an Elsie Janis show called Puzzles of 1922. It has a little bit of an Oriental sound to it, not quite. As I said, it's actually a French song from 1922, and a few years later it became a hit in the United States. Titina, inspired by Zez Confrey's, I forget whether he recorded for Duo Art or Apico. It's Zez Confrey's piano roll. Titina, thank you very much. I can see Charlie Chaplin with this. Oh yeah. It's the kind of, I don't know, cute tune that he would perform. Dave says, very melodic piece. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Well, I sure hope you're all enjoying the concert tonight. Even though I'm doing a lot of piano rolls, I just wanted to share these things with all of you. But if you want to help support my career, you can send in virtual tips. There's PayPal and Venmo information in the chat and in the postings on all three websites. And if you don't trust PayPal, I have a P.O. box on my website for checks as well. It's adamgswanson.com. It has my middle initial G in the website. Oh, I just got a request here that I can certainly play for you. Leo Roth, the Ragtime Kid, wants to hear Buzzin' the Bee. So The reason this fits in with tonight's concert is because I learned this off the piano roll hand played by George Gershwin. Gershwin made something like 140 piano rolls, I think. And this is one that he made as a very young man of a ragtime era tune called Buzzin' the Bee. He did not compose it, however. Let's see. Buzzin' the Bee, thank you so much. I'm so glad you thought of that, Leo. He asked who wrote the tune. I think the name was Jack Wells, something like that. But the instrumental version, which is what I just played, which has 3 parts, was also composed and arranged by Pete Wendling. It's odd that I didn't choose a Pete Wendling roll to play tonight because he's one of the greatest piano roll artists in history. But anyway, that's the story of Buzzin' the Bee. And if anybody has 78 record collections or anything, I am looking for the Gene Green record of Buzzin' the Bee. It's the only one of Gene Green's Victor records that I can't find, that I don't have. I would really love to find that. Well, let's do another roll here real quick. I mentioned Zez Confrey, who was the king of novelty piano. Thankfully, this is a recut as well. There's only one roll I'm going to play tonight that's an original roll that has really bad tracking issues, but I'm going to play it anyway. This next one is very much a novelty style ragtime piece, only it's not by Confrey's. Played by the composer, a man named J. Milton Delcamp. And I've never learned this to play myself, so I'm going to play you the roll. I do need to sit down and learn this because it's a great piece. Delcamp was a fantastic composer, and it's called the Rarity Rag. And I believe, well, is there a date on this? Yeah, it's from right in between the ragtime and novelty piano eras, 1920. Rarity Rag. Raggedy Rag. You know, you can also control the expression of these rolls a little bit just by how hard you pump, which is one thing that I like about foot-pumped player pianos. All right, my turn to play again next. I see someone in the chat here has mentioned Frederick Hodges. He's one of the only people I've ever heard perform that piece. And incidentally, it was never published. Sheet music was never written down, but it's such a great piece, Raggedy Rag. I'm going to play some early blues tunes for you now. And the one I'm going to play next is an example of a style of piano. Excuse me. It's not quite like the W.C. Handy blues. It's more like 1920s piano blues, Chicago blues style. The greatest example of this was Jimmy Blythe, who made dozens, if not hundreds and hundreds of player piano rolls. And he was a really, really excellent blues pianist. He did a lot of pop tunes too, but there was always a little bit of a blues flavor to his performances. So Jimmy Blythe is probably the most popular one. He actually made a lot of rolls for orchestrions, which were big, had much bigger rolls, you know, with like 10 tunes on one roll. But I'm not going to play one that I learned off a Jimmy Blythe roll. I'm going to play a song that I learned off a Clarence Johnson roll. And Clarence Jelly Johnson was a very similar figure, had a very similar piano style, and again, the late Mike Montgomery produced a number of albums of both Jimmy Blythe and Clarence Johnson's music. That's where I first heard this, and I loved it. It's called the Joe Oliver Blues. It's named for the trumpet player from New Orleans, King Oliver, and I highly doubt the music was ever published. I'm not 100% sure on that. The tune was composed by Thomas A. Dorsey, who was an African-American songwriter. His biggest hit in the 20s was a tune called It's Tight Like That. It's not the famous Tommy Dorsey who played trombone and led the big band, but Thomas A. Dorsey, again, as played by Clarence Johnson, the Joe Oliver Blues. you, folks. That's another example of a cool 1920s off-key ending. It was common on player piano rolls. Dizzy Fingers. I'm afraid I've never played that. Even though it's so famous, I've always played Kitten on the Keys. I've done that for years. Let me check Twitch here real quick. Well, there's a question on Twitch. Did the composers of these rolls demonstrate piano techniques that are unorthodox to a real piano player? Yes, they did in some ways. It wasn't just composers who wrote for rolls. The way the rolls were arranged, often feature more notes than 10 fingers can play. But that doesn't mean that they all sound bad or mechanical necessarily. Let me see how many other tunes I'm going to play for you tonight. Well, I see another request. I hate to just play Leo's request tonight. You go ahead and send in some more, folks, and I'll try and watch in the chat. I see some more that I don't know. Sorry about that. I can do Ole Miss Rag. Let me go ahead and play that for you next. I think that's a good idea, Leo. Ole Miss Rag was written by W.C. Handy, since we're doing blues tunes. He was the father of the blues, but this was the only instrumental rag that he ever composed. And what's interesting about this piece is that Scott Joplin himself recorded it on a hand-played player piano roll. It was the only piece Joplin recorded that he did not write himself. Why he chose this piece, I don't know. But let's do the Ole Miss Rag now, complete with a few of the licks from the Joplin piano roll. Yeah. Vanya says, Leo has good requests. It's okay, Adam. I hope that's true. Ole Miss Rag. Thank you very much. Just like Yellow Dog, which was originally called Yellow Dog Rag, Handy changed the title of that to the Ole Miss Blues without changing a single note of the music. He did the same thing with Yellow Dog Rag and turned it into the Yellow Dog Blues without changing a single note of the words or the music. Oh, I see a couple of good requests there, but I'm afraid I don't know those pieces by heart. Eccentric and The Thriller. No, don't know those. Wish I did. If you'll bear with me, I want to play another piano roll for you. Dave, I'm not going to play my own rolls. I'll explain that at the end of the concert. I really want to share some of these with you. And now this I have not shared with anyone yet. And it was exciting for me because I discovered this in my own collection. I think it's got to be quite a rarity. And I found this about, it's almost 2 years ago now. I was going through a whole box of rolls, and I don't even remember where I got them. It was all piano rolls that were missing their labels, or the boxes, or I didn't know what the names were, and I must have about 50 of these. And I went through all 50 rolls and figured out what the titles were, or who the pianist was, or the composer, or the piano roll label. And with the QRS rolls, I have books where I can look up who the pianist was or what date it was recorded. And so I bought new boxes for them, these nice new boxes, and created new labels in Photoshop. I spent a lot of time on this, and this is a roll that I found, and I would not have been able to figure out what it was if it wasn't for the fact that it's a QRS word roll, which means that it has words to the tune on the side of the piano roll. And this was recorded in December 1927. It says so right on the roll. And it says played by Sid Laney. You can see the signature here. They're not real autographs, but a lot of hand-played rolls had signatures on them. And Sid Laney was one of the pseudonyms for the greatest piano roll artist of all time. I have to represent him tonight, J. Lawrence Cook. But this was done in the 20s when Cook had a unique sound as a piano roll artist a little bit before, he started imitating everybody else. You know, a lot of the Fats Waller piano rolls, they say, were actually made by Cook. Now, Sid Laney was actually J. Lawrence Cook. And this is an extreme rarity because the title of the piece is The Roaming Rambler Blues. It's a Lonnie Johnson blues guitar record that J. Lawrence Cook made into a hot piano roll. If you don't know who Lonnie Johnson was, I guess you would describe him as more of a Delta blues style performer, kind of like Robert Johnson almost, although not quite that good. But it's just so unusual that a piece like this, I'm sure it was improvised by Lonnie Johnson, probably only ever recorded once, if he even did ever write it down. I doubt it. The Roaming Rambler Blues. Tracking on this is a little iffy, so bear with me, but I want to share this with all of you because it's quite a rarity, I think. Pretty unusual to hear a blues tune like this on a piano roll. I just bowed. I don't know why I did that. I didn't play it. It's just habit, I suppose. You won't hear that anywhere else. That was really quite a thrill for me. Like I said, I only figured out what it was because I could still see the words on the side of the roll. See, the original label is missing. I didn't even have the box. And for a while, I wasn't 100% sure it was the same tune, but it sure is. Yeah, not your usual J. Lawrence Cook. Tom typed that in here on YouTube, which is absolutely true. Adam, what do you do when you place your hand inside the piano where the roll is? I'm just putting the roll on the tracker bar. The tracker bar has the holes in it for all the different notes on the piano. And this is called the spool box where the piano roll goes. Let me see. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 tunes. I'm afraid I'm just about out of time for requests because I have a couple that I promised to people already, like prior to the start of the concert tonight. So I need to do that, and wait, let's leave that there, because I'm going to play 1 or 2 more rolls before the night's over. We're going to go down to New Orleans now, and I'm going to play for you Jelly Roll Morton piece that is the rarest Jelly Roll Morton piano roll. Morton recorded for vocal style piano rolls, which is kind of ironic because of all the piano players I can think of, Jelly Roll Morton's style is not one that you sing along to. So it's funny that he recorded for vocal style, but this is the rarest of the Morton rolls, and I was fortunate to get a recut of it. It's a piece he wrote called The Pearls. And what's really special about the roll is in the second section, he does an accent and a stop time feature on the 4th beat of the measure, which is kind of odd. And he didn't do this in any of his other performances of this piece, but he did it on the roll, and that's how I learned it. So here's The Pearls. by Jelly Roll Morton. Thank you, folks. I was going to play one of the Morton rolls for you, but I think I'm going to run out of time before tonight's concert is over. So I guess we're going to skip the Shreveport Stomp, which is truly one of the great, exciting piano rolls of the period that shows a lot of improvisation. Morton was able to go on a piano roll, whereas on records of the time there was usually a pretty short time limit. Here, I'm going to show you another piece of sheet music. I'm going to play a song for you written by the great ragtime composer Lucky Roberts. And this is really exciting because of his piano roll performance. That's what made it so amazing. Lucky only cut about a half a dozen hand-played player piano rolls. And this is not one of his rags. It was written for one of his Broadway shows. It was an all-black Broadway show in 1922 or 23. 23. And here is an original copy of the tune, which is extremely rare. I only recently added this to my collection earlier this year, and I'm not allowed to tell yet exactly where it came from. But I'm showing it to you anyway. The Broadway show was called Go-Go. You can see the cover artwork there. I have no idea what it was about. But the tune is called Molasses. And there's words to it, believe it or not. I can't imagine that you would sing along with the piano roll. It's molasses is not about, sticky maple syrup or something. Here's the words. I want some molasses. Give me some molasses. Must have molasses. Like them lasses I just had. Don't believe there's no molasses. There can't be no lasses. But if there's no molasses, like them lasses, then I'm glad. Oh so sweet and oh so bendable. I'll say they're recommendable. Music starts, them lasses trickling, then they don't start to tickling. I want some molasses. Must have molasses. Give me some molasses. Like them lasses I just had. Don't believe there's no more lasses. There can't be no lasses. But if there's more lasses, like them lasses, then I'm glad. Lasses, lasses. And I want to add, want 'em mighty bad. Molasses like I had. That gives you an idea what it's about. Not exactly a really brilliant lyric, but it's quite a piece of music. Molasses. Thank you very much, folks. That's a little bit of Lucky Roberts for you. Yeah, that's one of the truly great piano rolls that was made, hand-played rolls back in the 20s. You see, these rolls, a lot of people don't understand, people who don't have player pianos, that they are a recording in a sense, not like an audio recording, but they are documents of music that are very important, wonderful, and valuable. Classical musicians, for instance, the ones I have heard speak about the subject, just say, "Oh well, there's no expression and they're not real recordings." That doesn't mean they're not great. Obviously there's a lot of wonderful music that has been preserved because of player piano rolls, and people in the early 1900s must have had a lot of fun with them. I promised two of my good friends that I would do something tonight, and I'm going to play this for them as the last piece that I'm going to perform. This is in honor of my friends Marilyn Schoon and Bill Wortley. Bill's birthday is tomorrow, I understand, so I want to play one of Bill's favorite tunes for him. They've been truly wonderful supporters of my career, and one of Bill's favorite tunes happens to be Royal Garden Blues, which is one of the two tunes that I have released on player piano rolls myself. So it kind of fits in for tonight's concert. And I've only made 2 rolls that have been released. There are more in the works. If you want to find out more about them, contact Domingo Mancuello. He has started his own player piano roll company called Jazzipation. So look up the Jazzipation website to see when new rolls will be available. He didn't make nearly enough of them last time. They sold out very quickly, and so I know he's behind on doing that. But anyhow, now here for Bill is Royal Garden Blues. Royal Garden Blues. Thank you so much, folks. Well, I'm not quite done for the night. I wanted to play that for Bill, and let me check on Facebook here. They usually comment on Facebook. Yeah, okay, great. They got to hear that. I'm going to play one more roll, and we're going to close out the whole concert with a piano roll tonight, because this is undoubtedly one of the most incredible piano rolls that has been made in modern times. We're going to do the music of Tom Breyer, the great contemporary ragtime genius. And I'm so glad. I don't normally mention this during performances because I just don't think it's very nice, but I'm so glad that I had Tom autograph this for me before his car accident, because he can no longer do this. But here is the leader of the piano roll, and it says, "For my esteemed friend Adam Swanson, who will study this performance and play it note perfect and then enhance it. Best regards, Tom Breyer." And I have not done that. That's the most lovely autograph I got from Tom. I have not done that because this piece goes on forever. It's unbelievable. And it's called Blue Lampshade. It's one of the rags that Tom wrote. But the title is supposed to be kind of a joke because Tom was at a festival somewhere and he heard a group playing an old jazz tune called Boodle-Am Shake, and he couldn't hear the title, couldn't understand Boodle-Am Shake, and he thought they said Blue Lampshade. So he went home and he wrote this piece, and the last part of the composition, he just plays it over and over and continues to do variations on it that are really amazing. And he was doing a series of piano rolls before his accident called Olive Wood. That's the name of the piano roll label. I have them all because they're outstanding. And so let's do this, and then I'll tell you about what's coming next week. But here to close out the concert, Tom Breyer, the composer himself, playing Blue Lampshade. shade. Isn't that amazing? I don't know that there are any videos of that on YouTube, so I figured it would be well worth playing that role to end tonight's concert. Now let me tell you about what's coming up next week. Yes, Tom Breyer is an extraordinary man, incredible talent. Next week will be my now annual virtual Ragtime Christmas concert. Very excited about that. I've got a lot of Christmas tunes to practice between now and next Sunday, so please join me. If you enjoy the music, tell all your friends to listen in next week, because there'll probably be a lot of recognizable tunes. And thank you all so much for sending in virtual tips, especially tonight because I played a lot of roles, but I did that mostly because I wanted to share them with you. And thank you so much for supporting my career, listening to these concerts every week. There's about 150 of you that do, I think, just about every week. So I'm very grateful. And please don't forget to tune in next week for Ragtime Christmas again. Thanks so much, folks, and good night for now.